So, Nicholas, you've done quite a bit of a journey from starting Pixelwerk to building it up and seeing it getting acquired by Ørn Software. So, it would be really great to start off with, I guess, a bit of a founder story to kind of walk us through that whole journey and some highs and lows of that adventure.
Yeah, very good journey. Learned a lot in that process. We started as we're four partners, started a company with focus on augmented reality, virtual reality, really trying to bring out exciting technology to visualize processes in 2012. And the whole idea was just to get out there, build cool stuff, build cool solution, get customers to use our systems. Uh, Very exciting process, but very difficult always to be a founder and try to be innovative and to get the capital to get the business up and running. So we did a lot of other processes like helping companies, establish a CRM solution, website, different type of work, and also did some software development, which kind of led us in at some point to pivoting the whole company towards creating solution for SaaS solution for the aquaculture business in Norway. So that's kind of ours. We started at some point. We had to pivot the company, and then once we start to realize that there is a lot of potential and some exciting way to develop systems, that's where we kind of moved into the new journey that led us to be acquired a couple of years later by Ørn Software.
Awesome. Yeah, so like in the start, like paying the bills, figuring out the path, and then
Yeah.
basically, yeah, pivoting to is that- how like was that like how big did you get? Like how far did you go before getting acquired, and why did you decide to take that path versus kind of growing on your own?
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of journey that was made as we were moving along. So we had a plan once we pivoting the company to create a software, build the AR and at some point hopefully get acquired or have manage to create a larger business. But I think this was more about timing. We've been talking to different companies. This was still early in the process, and Ørn Software at that stage was also in an early process of trying to consolidate the segment we were operating or the vertical we were operating, and which made that quite exciting or interesting for us to be part of that journey. So that's basically what triggered the process, and for us to achieve a faster growth. Maybe at very early stage to move into a transition like that, but very exciting journey that we started together.
Hmm. How big were you when you got acquired? Like how many people?
So we were four people. So
Four
we
people?
we yeah.
Yeah.
So we had basically build up and build down again when we're pivoting to make sure that we have the right competence, the right team to help in the aquaculture. And then typical role when you are a CEO and sales manager and paying the bills and doing all the works and code the daytime and nighttime and sometimes in between too. So kind of a small team moving to a larger company where at that time was about 40 people.
And I know that you've always been really into kind of building out systems and processes, like kind of
Mm.
rev ups before it was cool, I guess you could potentially say. So, um, did that really kind of like building out systems and processes? Because one thing that we see a lot there is like because you both been a part of Pixelwerk, I'm Americanizing it in my head, and also part of expanding that kind of rev
Mm.
ups function at Ørn. Um, I feel like how do you balance that? The kind of because I see a lot like either you do nothing and everything becomes chaos when you're kind of a
Mm.
startup, you're figuring things out, or you go too hard in on building a lot of systems and processes too soon, and then you kind of forget to actually pay the bills, as we said. Is
Mm.
that something you experienced? And if so, like any kind of learnings from that or insight from that?
Yeah, I think it's. I like the way you say rev ups before. It was cool. I think the mindset was in place from day one. As a company, we were really trying to focus about the customers and solve the pains, and that the same happened into how do we sell the product? How do we communicate the product? How do we get in touch with those people, with those customers? We were very few resources, so the idea was, how can we do this in a very effective way? And for me, I think structure and system was very important from day one. It's very easy to build too big too early. So that's some of the things I've learned, and trying to build the perfect system that will give you the perfect customer journey. That's kind of a dream, an idea in the head, and I think as I went along, I started to learn that, okay, let's look at what creates a difference, what quick wins. I think was very important to see. Testing things, getting out early, so this system works, this process works, we're saving time. But I think to do right from day one was the key. So we started to build customer success mindset with one person working, with onboarding, working with support, helping on the sales side. So that's basically how we did it. And then I was working on closing the deals, talking to the customers, doing the presentation out there, and so on. So the mindset was in place, and we had to gradually work into the system. But I think that was key, because we were thinking about growing from day one. We were thinking about growth and focus.
And when you kind of then got acquired, because I guess that's a big change. You're founder, you're running your own thing. Of course, also more responsible. Like, you have that kind of nagging thing in your head that you are the ultimate person responsible if things go bad or good. At a bigger company, you might have another person that is also sharing that. So I guess it's like, how is that? Like, I guess my question is, like, how is that kind of transition, like going from running your own thing to being kind of acquired, and also then integrating into a bigger system? Like,
I think it was. I think it has, of course, a lot to do with the people and the management team. So for me, it was a fantastic experience, because I entered into a management team, very strong management team, well-established management team, that had a very clear vision, strategy, and very good discussion, about, hey, how can we do this in a smart way? That was the mindset when I came in. The thing you mentioned about giving some of the responsibility away, that was the best thing for me that could happen at that stage, because in those years being a founder, you constantly think about the bills, you think about the salary, you think about, we need to grow, we need to get smart, we need to get some customers, we need to get more money, and so on, and you have the whole product management side also. That's quite a headache along the line. So I think it was very good for me to be able to focus fully on the commercial side and commercial development, and then we went through a very exciting journey with that team. So I think that's what was good for me, or exciting in the journey.
what was the hardest to give up?
The hardest to give up, maybe that's, as co-founder, we made all the decisions before lunch. Now we have to wait maybe till after lunch. We need to discuss a little bit more.
Okay, so a little bit more kind of slower, good or bad, maybe. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Slower kind of decision processes and more stakeholders.
Yeah, and it happens as you grow, because you have more stakeholders. You have a different kind of owner structure behind the company, and so on. So it's more people you need to address when you take decisions.
Yeah, no, I think there's always like that kind of giving away some things that you actually enjoy doing, and keep. Yeah, no, that's. I would imagine that's quite challenging sometimes, at least. But as you said, frees up some headspace as well, so you can actually focus on. And a part of your focus there as well with Ørn, that was really like the kind of revenue operations, like actually like integrating that like with Ørn Software, or doing that at Ørn Software, because they also had a quite kind of explosive growth, right? And did acquisitions and things like that, if I'm not completely wrong.
Exactly. So it was a very, very exciting journey, because it went in a very short amount of time. So if you summarize, Ørn Software in its 4.5 years has grown AR with 11.5 times. Company went from about 40 employees to 200 employees, and been acquired 9 companies in that time frame, and also went through an IPO. So it was quite a lot of things to think about and work within the commercial or as a management team as a whole. But from my side, on the commercial side, so the whole idea here was really to start. We didn't call it revenue operation at that time, but we were really trying to remove silos. That was the main idea. So get marketing, get sales to work closely together, looking at put everything around the customer journey, look at customer success. They have a very big impact on onboarding, on retention, on upselling. So this is a little bit how we were structured. That was phase one. Wanted to create a more universal solution for the whole company. Also helps you when you hire new people, but it's very critical when you do acquisition, because in the post-merger integration phase, if you have a standard, if you come with an established standard, that's kind of, okay, this is how we work in sales, this is how we work in marketing, this is how we do as a company. It makes that process much easier for people to get involved and to start to understand. And that was a very exciting phase to see, because companies that we were acquired had set ways of working that they've been doing that for 10, 15 years. And then suddenly you come in a whole new operation, but you see the structure, you see the other companies that have been integrated started to use the same CRM solution, work with the same data, starting to understand the same KPIs and so on. And it creates a kind of culture around that, more about let's succeed as a company.
Was it completely like, so, okay, this is how we do it at Ørn Software, or was it a little bit also, okay, those guys are doing something really well, so let's take some of that and kind of, or how was kind of the dynamics there? Was it completely, okay, this is the way, or how did you kind of balance that? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, so it's a mix. So it's kind of, we wanted to learn as we move along, because we were growing also at a very high pace. So, which means that what we were doing yesterday was very smart, but it might not be that smart tomorrow, and someone else coming in with new ideas might have done things in a smarter way. So we try to learn, but in some specific areas, like when we're looking at brand awareness, communication, that type of thing, we had a very kind of set structure framework that we wanted every company to get into. Same when we're looking at CRM, we made a decision on a CRM solution. We want to make sure that we can start with lead scoring, we can start with upselling and what you want if you have everyone in the same solution. So for those areas, it was very specific, but of course we were open to discuss ways to work.
Was it any kind of resistance ever from some of the new companies with some of the processes and structures, or was it a smooth sailing?
I'm going to say smooth sailing, that would be a lie, but I think it's a normal resistance. I've been acquired myself into the system, so you kind of have a built-in resistance, because you've been believing as a CEO or that you've been doing things the right way for your company, and then suddenly you come in a new system, you need to look at different things, and people tell you now we do things different. You kind of have a resistance it's more challenging resistance, which I think is very positive, because then you get the good discussion, what did you guys do? This is how we do. How can we combine that, or get the best out of everything? So
yeah, and I think what a lot of people miss as well is like when you're growing as a company, right? Like you do need more layers, as you said. Like when you started, you were 4 people, you got acquired, you can make decisions before lunch. Having all decisions made before lunch when you're 200 people and everyone doing their own thing, that's probably not a good idea, because then everyone can make decisions, and the alignment, as you talked about there, with like different teams, that's going to be very difficult. So I think that kind of thing, like you gotta have some layer of complexity as you grow, to just kind of make sure everyone is actually aligned and we are not doing a ton of different things. Do you agree with that, or is that also kind of aligned with you?
Yeah, totally. I think it's more about the time. Like the more people you are, the more time you'll take. And when I started, we had this as an internal job that, hey, we do all the decisions before work, so let's before lunch, sorry, so let's keep this team that size. As you grow, you still think you can do it, but then you start to realize that no, you need to be addressed there, and you need to make sure that you communicate to that team and so on. So I think it's a strong point.
So when you're growing, because we talk about that with like building too many systems too soon. So like, do you have any kind of learnings there from that kind of explosive growth that Ørn had while you were there, in terms of like what were the kind of inflection points in that journey where things maybe started to break down a little bit, and what were the things that you were fixing at those stages, or the kind of key priorities that you needed to kind of deal with?
Yeah. It's so it for me was maybe two phases. So if you look at Pixelwerk as a small organization, we wanted to be as effective as possible. So it's kind of finding the right solution that I won't spend time setting up or updating or looking after, but that will give me a result quickly. So quick wins was the key. If you look at Ørn, we had more kind of a long-term strategy that where we want to get to as a revenue operation, or as a company, or as a commercial operation. It was more about finding, okay, what makes sense today? Does it still make sense tomorrow, or in 3 months or 3 years? And kind of starting to build that way, because we were doing company integration. So you have culture that needs to be integrated, a little bit what we talked already, but you also have data that needs to be integrated, and that kind of set it also a timeline on things. So as soon as, if you start from scratch, it's so much easier. If you start to integrate, that will cost you 3 months, 6 months, 12 months in the process, looking at the data, bring it out of the system, try to get value out of it. So we were trying to do that at the same time. So we are implementing a new way of working. We're removing silos, and then we're constantly importing data with those the company we acquired. So that was maybe the challenging part, but I think was very quickly move away from the idea of finding the perfect solution was maybe the key things we did. What we wanted to do is, okay, let's find a solution that will help us along the line. And even at that stage, try to look into the quick wins. Where do we succeed? Okay, this works, this doesn't work. What does it work? Why doesn't work? And then move from those findings.
How do you balance that? Because we talked about quick wins, and I'm also a big proponent of like no matter what you're doing, also to kind of to get buy-in and get people excited, to keep that momentum, so people feel like something is happening. So it's not like, yeah, we're just gonna have all this cool stuff in a year, but nothing is gonna happen before then. So balancing, but that kind of balance between those quick wins and kind of action focus with the more kind of longer term plays and long term thinking, like how do you kind of balance those different ones in the way you were working?
I think it was about, for me, it was KPI. So it was very strict. Like I will always ask the question, this sounds like a very good thing to do, a smart thing to do, but how does this contribute to our KPIs? How does this contribute to our customer journey? Or how does this contribute to increased sales, for example? Like I will look at specific metrics, and then I will ask myself, what we're doing now, the time we're spending on that, what's the return on investment down the line? Could be brand awareness, very difficult to find a good parameter around that. But if it contributes to brand awareness, that could be a good idea to do that. And this is kind of how me and the team eliminated the activities that don't generate direct return on investment on either brand or revenue.
Mm. So with the operational things, like was it like, yeah, you mentioned there with brand awareness, for example, because it can be very difficult, it's long term, but was there other bits as well that you kind of struggle with kind of proving, at least in the short term? And if so, like how do you kind of get about to get a feel for those priorities?
Lead scoring, for example, it takes time for you this doesn't take you time to build lead scoring, but to kind of make sure the machinery works, and then you get the right findings, and then you put the right value on the score. That's a time consuming process. So the idea is to identify very quickly in a portfolio, after you acquire a company, where is the potential, and how reachable is this potential, but then fine tuning that's really going to give you the success in the long term in revenue operations. So that's a typical example that I think was very difficult to manage, because you're expecting a result that you're going to wait down the line, but you still get some kind of indication along the way.
Yeah, and I think lead scoring is a very interesting example because so many cases I see there, like people treat it as either super generic or kind of we build it once and the assumption is that okay, this is gonna work forever. We don't need to do anything with it. And also then with that, kind of the expectations also from sales is either oh, this is gonna be perfect straight away, so you're gonna get all the good stuff, or that it's just oh, all those people want to buy. So treat them as hand raisers, not necessarily as kind of a warm or outbound, which I prefer to do when I talk to sales rep about like that kind of leads triggers. Like they got to understand that this person is not going to buy tomorrow, but you should probably have a chat with them. Um, so how did you go about with lead scoring? And like what was your approach for kind of optimizing it? And also, I guess between those different companies, was it all the same or different? So that was 3 questions, and that's a rookie mistake asking 3 questions in one. So let's see what you answer.
So I'm going to give you 5 answers since you asked 3 questions. Yeah, no, I think in this case we use lead scoring for a specific purpose. Is that because we were acquiring companies, we were acquiring a portfolio, and that portfolio, what we're trying to define was that how relevant is that in the same vertical that we are working with. So we will set criteria. This is for upsell purposes. We will set criteria based on that and said, okay, you're this size of company and so on, like different criteria, saying that since you're using this solution already, we might have this or this or this solution that will be suitable for the same amount for the same type of customers, and that's how we approach lead scoring. So kind of upsell throughout the whole portfolio. That's the main focus.
So that was it sounded like it was a bit like for acquisition, like did I get it right there? Is it like a little bit for kind of how you evaluate potential acquisitions also with lead scoring, or what was that? Did I get that wrong?
No, it was after acquisition. So once you get integrated the company and you get access to the portfolio, you start to look yeah, at the potential within the portfolio and see how you can grow.
Mm. Would you only do it with kind of like what would be your kind of favorite triggers for lead scoring? Like what would we be looking at there?
You I think about type of criteria.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's a mix of things. I want to see 2 things. For me, uh, I want to see numbers that says that okay, this size makes sense. That type of customers probably has the budget, things like that. Like looking at the company as numbers. That's one thing. That's just to qualify. But I also want to see as activities like is that company interested in that type of information? I want to see how they respond on the content. I want to see engagement throughout early stage in the customer journey, and maybe if we're talking about larger companies, enterprise or sales, I want to see interaction at different kind of level in the company. Could be through any type of content, web or playbooks or whatever we were publishing. So you don't kind of because I think lead scoring, you mentioned something, but lead scoring is, I think, often seen as not cold calling anymore, not cold leads anymore. But it could be a cold leads when you just enter data into a system and you have a connection with that company, but through a totally different stakeholder and a totally different department in the company. So you kind of start again from scratch. So this is why I want to look at that type of both sides of the data.
Would you usually only do like marketing triggers, or would you also try to include kind of like some kind of like from sales, like there's, for example, I sent an email to someone 6 months ago and someone all of a sudden start clicking that again, or an old quote, or like,
Hmm.
would you include that kind of things as well, or would
Yeah.
it purely be kind of marketing activities?
No, it would be that type of activities where you went from cold to show interest again. That would be triggered. Yeah. And that would need to trigger a fast response.
Yeah. No, awesome. So let's go back a little bit there too, because you mentioned there with like looking at KPIs to kind of make decisions, balancing long term and short term. And you mentioned there, like, so one thing I thought I had there that would be interesting to talk a bit about is kind of when you're making those kind of mergers, like, was it always kind of the same kind of KPIs that you were tracking before and after? And if so, like, what was the kind of things that you really paid a lot of attention to before and after an acquisition to see kind of, operational improvements and efficiency improvements in general, and to get red flags if something is not working.
Yeah. So I think now you ask one question, so I will give you two answers this time. You know, so I think it's two things here. Is that for me at least? Is one is the type of acquisition you're doing. So if you're doing acquisition to grow a portfolio, that's one thing. If you do acquisition to grow another country, like a geographic expansion, that's again a different type of maybe KPI you're looking at. So I think that's where it starts, and then I want to see how I'm more concerned about customer journey. So how do you operate with your customers? You know, how customers in center, how does the product fit the market? That's why I want to understand, and then we can go into sales KPIs. We can go into marketing KPIs. Are you tracking everything? Are you tracking anything? That could be also a question. You know, a lot of companies went from 4 people to 10, 15, and then they still do the same process that when they were 4. So if you're lucky, you might find a couple of Excel spreadsheet with some data about the customers. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But actually, KPIs was one thing I was more concerned about, understanding the process. How do you work? How do you approach your customers? Why do you sell? You know, what triggers the sell? How do you close deals and things like that?
Do you have some because I guess there was a lot of different kind of approaches there from the companies that got acquired. Was there some kind of surprises or interesting kind of realizations from when you were looking into the companies before they were integrated and looking into how we can do that? Like, was it some kind of oh, I didn't realize that this was the thing, or some kind of big surprises when you were doing it?
No, I don't think it's big surprises, but it was actually a kind of flashback for me as a co-founder of a small company. I see the growing pains, and I see the things that, okay, yeah, we acquired this company with this product, but you might have 2 or 3 different products under, and that's typical. That, as we said earlier, you start with something, but you need to pay the bills, so you start to doing that, and then you have customers that might don't really show up in the acquisition process. Then suddenly you have interesting customers that have nothing to do with the vertical or the type of product you're selling. So that's kind of the things that you find out down the line once you start really to work with those customers and with those companies. But I think for me it was very interesting. What I learned a lot is through having them telling their stories, and I could relate a lot to what they went through. And I think in that acquiring process, you're selling, you're buying, so you're not really talking a lot about those processes. But after, once you get to know each other, like, you get some amazing customer stories, amazing growth stories, and I think that maybe to try to answer your question is that what everyone brings into the team, that maybe that what I was not aware of. Like, okay, seems like a nice guy, seems he has control, but that experience, those storytelling, and their way of their approach, I think that was maybe what I didn't really think about. That can come up as a bonus for us.
And I guess as well, there, like, actually having done the journey yourself and just seeing other people in a similar situation there and kind of giving those kind of flashbacks, but also helping you to really understand what they're going through, and also what they're going through when that acquisition actually happens. I guess that's something that is really, really useful as well there, in terms of just guiding them through that process into integrating it.
It is, and yeah, I think it was very valuable, and I know I could relate a lot, but I learned a lot from them, and that was really really exciting period. A lot of experience. You meet people that have been building companies. You meet people that have been in business for so many years, and I've been through the tough times of not having money on the bank to pay salaries into getting acquired. So it's very, very contrast journey along the way.
So if you would get say that I'm a SaaS founder here, I'm evaluating doing getting acquired. There is some offer on the line here, and So two parts of the question. First of all, like what are some things that you maybe wish you would have thought about before you did it? And also, but let's start with that first. I'm actually only going to ask one question now, and then I'm going to ask my second part.
You can you have. I think we had a lot of conversation along the way. I think that was very good for me. I met people, or we met people, my team. We met. I went to the company head office, talked to them. They invited me to meet customers. I think that was key. So it was no surprise for me in a way. But if I would do something else, I might even talk to more customers, because you learn a lot from your customers about a company. Much more. You get their view on the company and on the journey and on the growth and on their strategy. So I think that's maybe what I would recommend, or what I would, if I would go back in time, I would spend even more time asking customers.
And what about when it happens? So second part of my question was basically, so any tip, like someone who actually just got acquired, like any tips to kind of help them in kind of making that integration seamless from kind of a founder perspective into a bigger organization?
I think, yeah, now we're back into a little bit when we said, building revenue operation from day one. I think it's the same. If you're building a SaaS company with the mindset of getting acquired at some point, I think it's very, very good from day one that you will, make sure you structure, you organize everything you do, every documents, every board meetings, everything that you do, even in a small organization, that you start to prep yourself for getting acquired. Because what would happen the day when you start this conversation? They will ask you a question. You have nothing to hide. You're just showing, this is the documents, this is the process, this is how we do it, this is our ARR growth. And I think that creates a very, very good base for discussion. And I think the acquisition is just it's a quick phase. It's a few months of discussion, and let's agree on a value, on a price. But the most important part is that if you're going to be a part of the company, if you're going to be part of the management team, or if you're going to be part of any team in that company, you need to make sure that you have a very good conversation and carry on that conversation into first at work and first week at work and first month and so on. And I think maybe that's what was the success for me, and the rest of the company, going into Ørn, is that we had very good discussion in the start process. We had very good processes in the due diligence, and then once we started to work there, we were included from day one as part of the team. You bring ideas to the table. You get to test your ideas. You get to go out there and carry on the building what you were starting to build as your own company throughout a larger company. So I think that's, now I give you 4 answers for one question.
No, like it's fairly open questions, I guess, as well, with a lot of ways to answer them. So no, it's a great answer there. Thank you very much for that. One final thing here before we kind of jump into a little bit more, I guess. We've been a little bit philosophical every now and then, but one thing there as well is kind of in terms of when you're growing like a lot, there's a lot of kind of hiring going on. And of course, you have some parts in your journey as well where, okay, I'm actually stretched thin here. We actually need to find new people and hire new people to kind of build out the team, like head of sales, head of marketing, head of something, this and that. General thoughts there. Like, I'm gonna leave it super open. So when I say this statement, like what pops to your head when I say that, and what are your general comments on it?
General comments: find the right people for the right job. So for me, it was really about, I've been working remote since 2012. For me, it was about, you have this world out there with strong people. Location has never been a limitation. So I think that's the first key. Find the right people. Don't try to find in your area if they don't exist. Look at the right places to find the right competence. That's one thing that pops into my mind. The second part is about sharing the culture. What are we? Again, we're back into what is it we want to build. Put the customers in focus. What are the customers' needs, and then try to get the resources around that. At the early stage, we tried to do our organizational charts, traditional way to see how we want to solve a lot of issues. But I think if you turn around a little bit and said, hey, look at the customer journey, this is what happened. So this is the resources we need along the way to address those issues. And that change, you need to adapt, because you might at some point need a VP sales or CSO, but at some point it makes more sense to go into fully revenue operation. And it might not always make sense to bring customer success into that and so on. So you need to ask this question and just don't make decisions and say this is going to be like this for the next 5 years. This is changing so quickly that you need to constantly reassess and adapt.
Yeah, and I really like taking the approach from the customer journey, like focusing on the classic focus on the customer instead of focusing on kind of what you want yourself, and taking that as a stepping stone. I think that's a very interesting approach, also in terms of hiring. But yeah, as you said there as well, because I feel like a lot of companies and a lot of people, they try to solve for what might happen in 5 years, and they build systems, they hire people for what they need sometime in the future, like a maybe thing. And they hire some kind of a big shot VP of sales with a ton of big company, global expansion experience, and you're 10 people. And it's like, they're not going to do a good job there, most likely, because it's just so different, at least in my experience.
I think so too. And I think you need people that can build things. Like, you need people to, if you want to do a strong customer success, you need to start right from day one. Or if you haven't started from day one, or if you acquired a company that hasn't thought about it from day one, you need to go back some steps and have to state, okay, what's the basics that needs to be in place? And then you need people to understand that. You need people to have kind of been through those processes and feel it. And they will know how to do it, or to hire the right people to do that. And this is what you need to do in all the parts, if it's sales, if it's marketing, if it's operation, whatever it is, you really need to make sure that you take it off and say, this works. And then from there, you can start to look into how can we expand, or how can we correct that, or how can we do the changes, where's more potential and so on. And I think that's where you grow more into the VP phase, or CSO or CRO, or whatever phase that you need to grow into.
Mm. Yeah, and like building is very different from kind of, I think, scaling. Like I remember at HubSpot when I worked there as a sales rep, you had all the system in place. So doing sales there, you knew what you were going to sell. You had a process for it. You had a marketing team. And then I went to a very small company, and it basically goes from you're selling a product to you're figuring out what you're actually selling. And that kind of mind shift difference is just like, for me, that was really tough. Like it took like a year to figure out just, okay, I actually need to figure out what I'm selling here, and we need to build a process. We need to build everything out. So that was a big surprise to me. So I think actually it can be a mistake to hire, as I said, like a big shot or a corporate sales rep to your startup. Maybe it's not a good idea all the time.
It's everything is kind of in different phases. So you have the startup part, and then you have the scale up part. But even in between that, when we talk a little bit today about acquisition, if you look at acquisition, we had 13 products in 5 different countries. None of the product were on the same maturity stage. So it means that if you don't have the basis in place, if you haven't started from day one building a good structure, you can integrate as many companies you want. You want to understand how to do the sales process for that product, or how to, communicate that product out there. So it's kind of, in the same company, you can have very different scales. And that's also why I'm a big believer into, go back to the basic, build strong processes, make sure that people are on board, make sure that we remove silos. And you don't have silos in a startup, but it's very easy to start to build those silos if you not focus on that from day one.
Yeah, I'm such a big fan of the basic stuff. I've been ranting about that a lot recently, and just so many get the basics wrong, and then they try to do all the cool stuff that they read about, but they don't have the base processes, and they're wasting so much time on that. So good to hear that we're on the same page there. But Nicolas, let's end like on a little bit more, I guess, like a philosophical note, our kind of typical recurring question here. And it would be super interesting considering kind of the different kind of things you've been doing and different paths that you've kind of a journey here you've been through. So what would be some kind of a learning or insight that's had a significant impact or significantly changed your perspective on business and life during your journey?
So I think if I need to answer that question with one word, would be adapt. So for me, it's kind of starting a journey where I wanted to create the perfect, operation, and making sure that every leads would generate the sales kind of idea, 100% conversion. That would be maybe a dream. Um, but I think it's learning. What I learned along the way is that you need to focus on the needs. You need to focus on the size. You put the customers in the center, but you need also to look at your team, your employees. The competence you have around you. Uh, how do you want to approach that? And then, as we said different times today, in that stage you might do that activity, but that doesn't make sense in next stage. So at all time you need to adapt into the situation, into your phases, in the resources you have access. Do you have the capital to do it or not? Do you have the competence to do it or not? And so on. You need to ask this question and reevaluate it at all time. I think that would be maybe my biggest takeaway this last few years through those processes.
Yeah, no, no, I think that adapt thing, especially when you're through that kind of journey, I think you're gonna go crazy if you're not able to do that. I think you have to also to kind of keep sane and keep a little bit of balance sometimes in your life as well and get some sleep. Um, but do you have any kind of like do you have some kind of things there that you're doing to kind of help you being able to adapt? Like, do you have some kind of small tricks or some reminders that you do or some kind of things that you're doing to just kind of help you do that and help what is enough at any given point in time?
So I've adapted my rules where I wouldn't deliver anything unless it was 150%. Now I think I'm down to 80%. 80% is good enough. So that's one of the trick. The other thing is really about me trying to focus on things that generate value, things that would generate growth, and make sure that I spend the time on those things and those activities, and then reevaluate if it's a need to complete any other activities that don't directly generate a kind of a result. And that's both in the short term and long term perspective.
Yeah, I think if you can do that properly, adapt to the current situation, not trying to get everything perfect and getting it good enough, and also prioritize and daring to say no to things. So I think that's for me as well, like combined with what you mentioned here, is the kind of daring to say no to stuff. Like, what am I not doing?
Mm.
So you have those 80% that you have those high value things, but also daring to say, these are the three things that you'll be doing. I know those other things are pretty good
Mm.
too, but right now I'm actually going to push those away and just focus on those things that I believe have the highest value. I think that's also,
Mm.
I guess a little kind of how I really like to approach that one as well. That's working really well for me, but it's difficult. 80% is difficult as well because you really
That's
like
it.
to get it good.
And 80% real changes once you start to be acquired, because it's a different world, different stakeholders. It's external capital that's been putting into the company to grow. It's different expectation. It's if you're connected to VC or PE, so we're talking about 3 to 5 years terms into those deliveries. So I think that's also something that comes and push you into that direction where you need to say no. You need to have a strong focus, and you need to stop at 80%. I think that's it's natural in that process, but it makes the decision even more difficult because you're very you have different set of interest behind those decisions.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. No, so thank you very much for that, Nicholas. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today and listen to your journey and your insights in how it is to kind of that full growth journey from start to, I guess you can almost say, finish with getting acquired, and but then of course continuing there as well. Where can people go to find out more about you? Are you a LinkedIn guy? Are you a famous YouTuber? Or where can we find you?
LinkedIn, I think that's the
LinkedIn.
best spot.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. No, so
And
yeah, we'll be adding a
thank you
little
very
link
much,
there.
Andreas, for
Yeah, that's been an absolute
yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you very
So
much for having me.
thank you.